This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
This episode contains discussion around suicide prevention and wellbeing. Listener discretion is advised. If you or anyone you know is struggling over the New Year break or any time during the year, the helpline number is 1737 and the Youthline number is 0800 376633, and that's open 24/7. Welcome to the 2025 New Year's Day special of the OI podcast, brought to you by the Otago Institute, the Otago branch of the Royal Society for Arts and Sciences.
Mēnoi tātou, e raro, ka awatia. Ko te aroha te pau kia mau, ko te aroha te pau tiri a ki au. Kia mau ki au te pau o taraha ki wainu a tātou nei whānau. Hau me hui e
Tiaki e. Kia ora, Matt. Thank you very much for coming along and for that beautiful karakia. Today we have in the studio Mathew Kiore.
Kia ora koutou.
And myself, Barbara Anderson, Dr Barb and
Trudi. So welcome everybody and Happy New Year 2025. Bring it on, baby.
Happy New Year. Are we happy to have a new year going here?
Oh, yes. Goodbye, 2024.
I'm quite pleased for the start of the new year, I think. Hey, Matt, we've got you in the studio today, and I was just wondering, just before we start, if you'd just like to take a minute there and just introduce yourself to the listeners out there.
Oh, tēnā tātou. Ko wai au, ko puki kora mi ko te maunga, ko mangapū te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko mania poto tiwi, Ngāti Rora, Ngāti Pari Kaitini, ngā hapu. Ka whānau mai au ki Muruhaku, e whakatipu au ki te Waipounamu, kei mana pauri, te ānau, o Mārama, o Amaru, Otipoti me Hokanui hoki, no reira ka nohi nai nei ki Otipoti, e raru te korowai o Kaitahu, mana whenua kei konei, o tākau, no reira tēnā te mihinui, kia koutou. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Hey, we thought we'd take this New Year's Day special because New Year's Day, it's all about New Year's resolutions and it's about that new beginning and a new turning over a new leaf. And I guess it's not really New Year's Day in the Maori calendar of things, but just given that whole kind of Western idea of a new year and a new year starting, and a lot of people are thinking about New Year's resolutions. A lot of people are having holidays with family and friends, but a lot of people are also feeling maybe not so much connected.
Yeah.
And I think the holidays can be a tricky time for people. So we thought that we would take this time to just have a chat about that. And of course, I don't want to say an expert on the situation, but you're well versed in the challenges around suicide prevention and Māori wellbeing in particular, Matt, there.
Ai, tika. I think my biggest New Year's resolution is around the pūrākau o te koini Māori. Te puhi āriki nā wai hono i te pō. Te puhi āriki is like the chosen one, it's like the beautiful blossom. And it tells us that, that's how we should think about all of our mokopuna, our tamariki, our whole whānau. If we treat them as if they're the chosen ones, if they're important, they are tapu, they have mana, that's our best way to prevent suicide, is by understanding and acknowledging and respecting each other. And then we have these things called kawa and tikanga, which then keep us well and safe. They're the parameters and guidelines to do things well and to be well. And the waiter of that mahi, of our rongoa, getting that flow through understanding who we are and having our foundations under us. Everything else starts to flow from there. And so I think a New Year's resolution for me is how do we treat all of our people as if they're te puhi ariki, as if they're the chosen ones. How do we treat them super well so that then they can start to treat themselves and be as well as they possibly can be. Have their mana motuhaki.
It's a nice thought, actually, and it goes, I guess, beyond. I mean, everyone is someone's child or someone's mokopuna, even when you get old and wrinkly like us. And it's nice to think, it's not something it's something that can be spread beyond Māoridom as well. It's a very easy thing of us thinking, treat people with respect. And like it's a nice idea, isn't it? Like it's a good turn of phrase, the chosen one.
Yeah.
Because it makes everybody feel, if everybody felt like they were worth worthwhile and chosen, like the Neo from the Matrix, the chosen one. I mean, it gives you that kind of...
Yeah, and for me, it's kind of like thinking you're meant to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you have purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and if you have purpose because you're meant to be here, actually you're more likely to stay here.
That is true.
And fulfill your purpose. So quite often when we fall out of sync with ourselves, we start to feel, or we contain things that make us feel unwell. That's when we start the koroirangi and we sort of get drawn down into a space where we don't feel like we want to be here or we don't feel well. And so having the ability to externalise those feelings, because they're not good for us, they're not meant to be what we contain. They're not because I think about te kakano and the seeds that we plant in our mind and the things that we speak and the way that we feel in our heart, those are the seeds that we grow. And so Te Puhi Ariki is talking about, let's plant divine seeds. Let's share those tapu and mana-based thoughts and things that grow goodness and wellness within us so they can flow through.
It's a really nice image of planting a seed of something nice, like a vine that's going to turn into a beautiful plant, and then just looking after that plant, which is in yourself. So I know I do it as well, and I know a lot of people do it. Is sort of negative talk, they call it, and I think that's my take on that.
Yeah,
on
the inner
your
critic.
purako there. Yeah, you're the inner critic of myself, which is often much more critical than other people, and I think that's quite a common.
That's quite an interesting phenomenon, eh? Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
Is it because we're not cherished by others or don't think we are? And that seed hasn't been planted. We're not talking about, lollipops and rainbows and unicorns here. This is really quite core stuff in terms of who you are and where you are in your community and those around you. Yeah.
And where you get your worth from as well. Like a lot of people get it from, from the job that they do or external somethings to themselves, and then of course if that's taken away, that can have quite large repercussions.
Yeah,
so.
For us, or for me anyway, there's a pūrākau that I learnt as I learned to do rongoa. Ko te wairua, ko te hā, ko te hā, ko te mauri, ko te mauri, ko te tapu, ko te tapu, ko te mana kua hau. And so that tells me that the wairua, that in the very beginning there was a creation of the first person, and that was all the gifts of all the atua, tāne shaped hine ahu hone, and the hā. So the wairua was all those koha, and then the hā that gave mauri.
So the hā is the breath.
The hā is the breath. Yeah, and the mauri was then the purpose.
Right.
And the energy. And then that made hine ahu hone tapu, because she was really important. She's significant. Taku pupuri te rangi, she has the hold on all that divinity from all those atua that gifted all those parts so that she could exist. And then because she was tapu, she had mana, she had power, she could do things.
Right.
And then, that's where we all come from. So she gifted that through era tangata, through all the different generations down to ourselves. And you often hear a kōrero called waiwai tapu. So when we go into the marae for the first time, we're waiwai tapu. It's important where we put our feet.
Right. So waiwai is the feet?
Waiwai is the feet, tapu is sacred.
Sacred.
But we're talking about the fact that if you make a mistake, you do things wrong, then actually you could cease to exist. That could end with you. And so the waiwai tapu is about actually acknowledging how important you are, because all of those ancestors for all of for all of time have enabled you to exist.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought that, eh? Because it's true for everyone. Like, in order for you to exist,
you've had
all of your ancestors, all the way back,
thousands and thousands
of years, had to have existed.
Had to have been careful and productive and successful, so that you could be. You're actually the culmination of thousands of people's success.
Yeah.
Just so that you could be sitting here. And so that taku pupuri te rangi, that's my hold on my own divinity.
Yeah. And that actually does make you feel slightly important, eh? Like, I don't know.
No, I'm moving into existential angst here, because why is it that my ancestors lived and not somebody else's,
Well, yeah.
But
Nā wai honui te pō also talks to te pō uriuri, te pō nako, te pō tango. So te pō uriuri, when you're in the puku of your mama.
Yeah.
Te pō nako, all those pō throughout your life. te pō tango when you return to Papa Tuanuku into the earth. And so Ngā Waihono is about the connections, right from the very first breath to the very last.
breath.
And all those connections, all those things are meant to keep you well and look after you in this, this journey.
Do you think when you think about life more as a journey and you start thinking from, like you're always thinking of the whole journey of the first breath to the last breath, do you think that death becomes less of a scary thing, like natural death?
It's just
like the process of just growing old and dying.
I think for us it's a natural part of existing. Like our tangihanga tell us it's a natural part of existing. And it's normalised in te ao Māori because kei te ora, kei te mate. I think it's normal. But I don't think it might not be as scary when you're exposed to it as often.
I think that's what I think. I mean, I think our ancestors probably were more exposed to it. Like, your grandparents and older people dying and being part of life previously, before we became very industrialised and westernised with hospitals and things. And I think that perhaps that we've become more disjointed from the process of a natural death, and maybe that's kind of somehow just, I don't know, maybe like changed our view on what's a natural and like life and death and dying, and I don't know.
But it's also like we've removed birth from the home to birthing places, although that's come back a wee bit. And also, like as we've kind of industrialised, even just the killing of our food, you don't see that, whereas that was all around you. It was the whole...
Like everything's kind of taken a step back.
We're slightly more removed from those things that are core to our fundamental stuff, like food, nourishment, life.
Yeah, I think I might give it... So if I think about tangaroa, like the ocean, I think about the wairua. So the mahi wairua that we do in our rongoa acknowledges all of those things along the journey. So we might go to the ocean because we feel out of sync with ourselves. So we might go there and tātai or do an incantation chant thing to help us get in sync with ourselves. And so that might be one type of mahi we would do there. Another mahi we might do there is roku kaimana, like going diving for pāwas and kinas. Yeah. And that has a different wairua, but it's just as important. And so when you're looking in the ocean looking for pāwas and kinas, there's an energy that you get when you see it, and that's a really healthy energy because it's an excitement. It's I've been successful. There it is. And then there's the energy when you take that kai home and you share it with your whānau. Yeah. Okay. There's that manaakitanga that you're sharing. So there's another wairua there, another energy there. And then there's the energy when you tunu kai, like when you actually sit there and around the afternoon fires and you can smell all the aromas, atua are greeting you and you have that kai and you absorb that kai. There's another wairua there that actually fills you up and replenishes your energies, your physical energies. So there's all this rongoa around us. But it's understanding that this is rongoa, understanding that this is what I need at this time, and this is how I help myself. So people will often think about rongoa as like the rongoa rākau, like the tree or the plant or things. Yeah. But it's actually about the wairua. It's about the energy, the things the seeds that plants in us when we're sitting with our whānau having a kai and we're laughing, we're talking, we're sharing. There's all those are all wairua healings as well.
Yeah, no, it makes sense actually, doesn't it? So it's more like, I think when you just think of rongoa as you just translate it just as medicine, then I think you're doing the word and the concept a disservice because it's more like
holistic.
It's more like healing. It's more like the whole.
Yeah. And Tā Mason did a beautiful job of articulating te whare tapa whā in terms of the taha wairua, hinengaro, tinana and whānau.
So te tare whapa?
Te whare tapa whā, where he talks to the different aspects of wellness that lead to Māori Ora.
That's the sort of house structure.
The house structure,
walls, yeah.
There's another way of thinking about te whare tapawhā as in an awa, ngā puna o te wai, and the different, like a waterfall actually, if you think of it like a waterfall, and Matua Wiramu and Leslie Near, they share this kōrero as well, where you have ngā puna o te wai. So you have wairua at the top, the wairua flows into the hinengaro. The hinengaro will grow it, it'll manifest it, because that's what hine do. They grow potential. So whatever comes in from the universe, from the environment, is then grown in the hinengaro. That then manifests in the tinana, in the physical, in the body and the things around you. And then that flows and is processed by the whānau. And the whānau then, whakawhānau, they have another whānau, and it goes through the next generation and iteration, and that's how the wairua is passed on through. But when we think about the waterfall, if life happens, so something good falls into one of those puna, kei te pai. But if something ungood falls, like so maybe some sickness or some trauma or some injury falls into one of those puna, then the water gets dirty, and then it's not so good. Anywhere below that, it's struggle to drink or to stay healthy if you're drinking from the puna that's had those things in it. So there needs to be some things to intervene to take in essence the dead sheep out of the puna, and then flush the system so that the whole system can get clean.
But it's true, right? Because like, if you've got something that's come in as a trauma at one part, then it actually flows all the way down and affects all the other parts. So, trauma in a mental event can then have a physical manifestation.
Yeah, absolutely, and the stress and all those things that come in and express themselves to the body, whether it's, the skin goes, the nutrition goes, pulling out the hair, whatever those things, however they manifest in the physical. But the key is to understand that the top puna is the wairua.
Yeah.
Because the wairua is the thing that we, especially in our Western services, don't do as deliberately as we could.
Yeah.
And so it's a really good opportunity.
How would you explain the wairua in a more, if you wanted to expand on that concept?
So if I wanted to expand on the wairua, I'd say the time and energy that we contain. But I would think about it as connections, the things that we're connected to that provide a source of purity, a source of energy that fills up. So I think about the ngahere. And when I spent a lot of time in the ngahere in the bush when I was growing up. Yeah. And when you get used to walking around in the bush all day, all night, for days and days on end, you start to understand how the forest heals itself. So you'll have a slip go down through the forest, and you see all the different rākau that sort of come in along the edges of the slips, and they're normally the plants that are healing. They're healing the bush, but they're also the plants we use to heal ourselves. Yeah, it's where the koromiko, it's where the kawakawa, it's all of those colonising species around the edges. Yeah, it's true. So they're often where we'll find that all, and so. And it's the same, like when we think about what we need. I don't diagnose like a clinician might diagnose. I look at the person, I spend time with them, hearing them, listening to them, and then I ask myself, how do they make me feel? Right. And often that's my understanding of what they need. Once I understand how they make me feel, whether it's they make me feel sad or they make me feel overwhelmed or confused, then I understand what's going on for them, and then I can think, actually, they might need some stability. They might need some, calm energy. They might need an ability to externalise what's going on. And so we'll work through a process as we start to understand to check that we're in sync, and then check that, okay, so we'll try things that will start to do that for them.
So that's quite a very immersive process for you. So, as well as the person you're working with, it must be quite challenging, I would have thought. And take a lot of emotional energy and intensity.
Quite exhausting for yourself as well. I think there must be a point where you have to make sure that you're looking after yourself as well there. Yeah, I think process. You definitely have to have good connection with wairua yourself. And that's all the time in the ngahere and the ocean and and those things that keep you, looking after yourself, keep your flow going, keep yourself well. Yeah, and that's a little bit like what they say on flights, put your own oxygen mask on first, and then put the oxygen mask on. And I think, for you, especially because you're working in this field, all the time, but it must also carry on for, people who are who are whānau for other people and, friends and family and carers. It's also quite a takeaway message, I think, and that there are a lot of carers in society, people who are looking after people, either people with physical or, family with dementia or whatever. And I think that's a really important takeaway. And probably it goes back to that, making sure that you feel that you're important as well, and make sure that you get that.
Prioritise the things that you need to fill your cup and keep your cup clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
because otherwise you can't really be helping.
Because you're just going to fall over. Yeah. You won't be robust enough.
Yeah, and it's those vibrations, the oro. So the oro that you're putting out or that you're sharing are the vibrations that others can pick up on and then grow and then heal with. And so if you're putting out, or if you've absorbed a lot of that negative vibration, you've got to work out a way to process that so that it doesn't, keep you in a low space or an unwell space.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that's the tikanga that we learn, the protocols that we learn to do to keep ourselves well. So we go and pūre, we go and cleanse ourselves at the moana. We go for the hikoi up the maunga. We recite our karakia and our whakapapa and all of those things that ground us. And I do a lot of miri, and I do a lot of miri on myself. So I'll develop an energy and I'll place it and I'll use the breath to deliver it.
Yeah.
And, same as when I'm working on somebody else, I work on myself the same way.
So miri, translate that as massage?
Stimulation and agitation of energy.
Yeah.
So, I always tell my girl, me, I'm stimulating, ri, you're agitating. So, miri is to stimulate and agitate. So, ri of the tamariki can be a little bit agitating. Me, I'm always awesome. I hope she doesn't hear this.
Oh, dear.
So coming just that waterfall idea and trauma, and it flows down to the different generations, but also if you suffer a trauma, you've got to flow through a process as well.
Yeah.
Is that
well, I think a lot of our whānau don't understand what's going on. They're caught in the river and they're getting banged against the rocks and they're getting banged in the rapids.
Yeah.
They don't realise they're in a river. And so they don't realise that there's actually a bank that they can hop out on and get some calm for a while, get some safety while they work out which part of the river they want to be floating down and which bits they don't.
I feel like sometimes as well that people quite often don't realise that it's a trauma, it's something that's happened, as opposed to there's just something wrong with them. Like a lot of people who are in a trauma state, they start to think there's something wrong with them, that they're not able. And when you kind of get pressed down, I think that
this is the beauty of understanding the wharitapa whā as a puna rather as a puna or as an awa rather than a whare, is that when you understand if you're in the Hinengaro pool and there's a dead sheep in the pool, if you're just stirring it up, it's just keeping everyone sick.
Yeah.
So you've actually got to have the intervention that removes it so that you can create a flow from the wairua, because it has to be a puna above. It can't be the same puna to flood it.
Yeah.
You've got to create that flow to clean the system. And so when we don't have, if I look about the four relationships, so the relationship with myself, my whānau, my community and my environment, if you're working with a relationship with myself all the time, we're having a talk every other week and it's not helping, work in another relationship.
Yeah.
Go for a walk along the beach with that person, help them to process and release that energy in a different way. Maybe it's around the community. So I know a lot of our whānau from corrections, a lot of them are the ones that successfully complete suicide. But actually, there's few services that actually do the work with the community to change that relationship or to intervene and improve that relationship. And so you might be doing lots of work, but it might not be in the right relationship, or it might not be in the right puna. And so it's around understanding those things so that you can, because what we do is we say we specialise, but often specialisation, you also need to think holistically.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, because
we can't do everything.
You can't do everything.
But we need to know what else we need to make sure that the person's got access to for their hauora, for their wellness. And if what we're doing is just actually making the person feel worse every week, they come in, they see us, they feel worse, they go home, they need to see us again next week because they're still. Then sometimes we need to think actually, what are the other things what are the other relationships that we could be working on to help release this hurt? Because that hurt's not meant to stay in the puna.
Yeah.
We need to work out a way of releasing it. And whānau don't know that it can be released because they've just, that's the puna that they're in. And so.
And there's a lot of people, like, it's so much. It's such a big thing that it's a scary thing to acknowledge and to.
Yeah, I think it's scary. I think there's a lot of fear. But I don't think it's actually that complicated. If we know there's something that's hurting us and we've acknowledged that, we've externalised that it's hurting us, then it's just about finding a way to release it so that it stops hurting us.
So is it tricky, though, sometimes to get the externalisation?
I think it's tricky if you don't know to try something else.
Right.
Yeah.
If you know to try something else, then you'll generally be successful. But sometimes that takes resilience, and it also takes thinking outside the box. So I know our rongoa practitioners around the country are really good at considering other things because that's part of their practice.
Being flexible to who the person is that you're working with, I guess, is the trick there. And
Te rere o te wai, so you need to be in sync with the person and understanding what's impacting them and what's helping them.
Yeah.
And when we do like a thing like a wharetapa whā assessment, if we do that well, we'll get all the information that we need to be able to support that person.
Yeah.
So if you think about it like a wheel, and ask, pēhea te wairua, and they tell us, my wairua's a 1 being low, 5 being high, they tell me the wairua's a 2. Oh, so why a 2 and not a 3? They go, I haven't seen my whānau, I haven't been to the beach, I'm feeling da-da-da. You've got 5 things. So then I go, well, if you saw your whānau, if you got to the beach, where would your wairua be? Oh, I'd have been more like a 5. Okay, so now we know how to get you from a 2 to a 5.
Right.
Yeah, no.
I mean, and actually,
and then it's just about agreeing, well, what ones do you want to work on? So we can go right around the wheel like that, and all of a sudden we've got a plan that's substantial, that we know will be effective because the whānau's telling me that will get them from a 2 to a 3, that will get them from a 4 to a 5. And then once you sort of start doing that, mate, you feel the momentum. Everything starts to get better. Like I've worked with Te Wharetapa Whā for years and years, and I've never seen somebody that's following the Wharetapa Whā plan that's not feeling like they're getting improvement and getting well.
It's interesting, eh?
So it's just about, for me, it's just about taking the time to get in sync and actually listen.
Yeah.
Like it
And
always.
I wonder if it is that, it's a matter of resources, because there needs to, that takes a lot of time, doesn't it? When you're one-on-one with someone, and that time to get to know someone and the time to work through what it is, whatever the challenges are there. I'm pretty proficient with it, but I can do a wharetapa whā, like plan with somebody in 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, wow.
And
so it does, it's actually about having the process and understanding the process. And I think that's where we can really help with the Centre of Māori Suicide Prevention. We can help with the training to find and help clinicians develop their process.
Right.
It's one of the key things that we do is to enable them to have the tools to connect with whānau. And those are the types of things that really make a difference in the practice.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know, like, the GP visit is like 15 minutes. You can get a double visit, but they don't tend to specialise in sort of holistic wellness, and then you can get a a referral for counselling or something, but that generally takes 6 to 8 to 10 weeks to find someone. And you sort of think, if someone's really in trouble now, I don't know, that seems like a long time.
It's a long time to wait if you need help.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between clinical and cultural support.
Yeah.
So cultural support is much more cost effective and often will resolve a lot of the issues.
Yeah.
But because we choose the model of care to be more clinical, what happens is it's a bigger investment, so it takes longer to get to people.
Yeah, and I guess it's that thing that we talked about this on previous interviews, particularly with Pete Hodgson, around public health, which I guess this would fall into, because it's the whole holistic wellbeing and, helping people before they get to a point where it's...
Yeah, and it's actually the mechanisms that we need to invest in, I think.
Yeah.
And so, like, the new draft suicide prevention plan was consulted on just before Christmas. But I think of things like we've got lots of people in our community that could be enabled to support people right next door to them. But we don't have a mechanism that's there to help those people find them when they need them, or to train them so they're confident, so that when they do need to go and have a coffee with somebody, when they do need to take somebody to get their finances sorted or whatever other stresses are causing that person to be unwell, to give them the confidence to do those basic things that can help them to feel A, connected and supported, and B, get them connected with the clinical support that they might need.
Yeah, St John's have quite a good mental health online first aid course, but
do they?
Yeah, it's quite good, but it doesn't have that cultural component though, which
So
would
is that
really
where,
add value. Yeah.
Is that where the Centre for Māori Suicide Prevention, is that where that comes in? How do people access that?
So people can access that on request. So they can just, you can Google the website, the Centre for Māori Suicide Prevention, and you can request training in your communities and around the country. So we're national, so we cover sort of the whole country. And so we have a lot of functions, but we administer a community fund.
Right.
And we administer a rangatahi fund. So they're initiatives in local communities that know their communities well. So we support those. So there's about 1.6 million that goes into communities for initiatives, around wellness and Hauora. And then there's another 650,000 for rangatahi-led kaupapa. And
it's not a lot of money, but it's better than nothing. But
like, it sounds a lot, but then when you actually think it's covering the whole of the country, it's actually not a lot.
So it's about 74 initiatives that around the country that we fund with the community fund, and then another 42 that we fund with the rangatahi fund. So it's around 100 initiatives, which means we get coverage across all 4 regions.
Right. Like 4 regions.
So the 4 sort of health regions. So there's 3 in the North Island, and then the South Island is another region.
Behind myself there. Sorry, listeners out there.
So we get Northern, Manuataki, Central, and Te Waipounama are the 4 regions that we think of in health. And then the other things we do is our workforce development training. That's particularly to help clinicians, and then our Tiaki Whānau, Tiaki Ora, which is building resilience in communities.
So the clinical one, that's like helping GPs, doctors, in just in the health system, nurses, around there.
That, and even like people that might be face to face with whānau that might need help. So like where did we go recently in Dunedin? We went to Te Rito Maioha, and so we run a training for them for their early childhood educators that'll maternal mental health's another issue that
it's a big thing.
So enabling professionals, enabling services that might come face to face in the community, really important mahi.
So
do you do any interactions with medical school? Do you think that would be a really good introduction?
And the nursing as well.
So we've got trainings planned with like new grad nurses and lots and lots of trainings across the country and it just depends on the requests that come in, really. And so we try and make sure that we're present in all the regions. We try and make sure that we're fair in terms of the time that different regions have to wait for support and service. So
is there a difference across the country in the need for? There's
definitely areas that will emerge as areas of concern. In terms of like there'll be a spate of losses in a particular area, and so we'd always try and prioritise those areas to make sure that the staff and the whānau are feeling like they've got the skills and tools to prevent further loss. So we'd go to those regions as a priority, or those towns or communities as a priority.
I kind of like that phrasing, losses, because that means you've lost something that's valuable, but that suicide word doesn't cover it.
Just when I was saying it, I was just thinking it's not really, it's a funny word, isn't it? Because it's just, I think losses is a better way of saying it.
Yeah. Because I think it conveys impact better.
And there's a lot of, I think there can be a lot of mixed, complex feelings when someone you love is lost in that way, because there's all sorts of guilt and sometimes probably anger and frustration and like a whole heap of emotions. Yeah,
and I think there's lots of issues that lead to suicide, and I think the issues that we probably deal with really well, and there's issues that we don't really acknowledge at all.
Right.
And so knowing that there's things that lead to suicide that we might not have even thought of, that, if you haven't had the lived experience or haven't been in that place, it's hard to understand what somebody's going through.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to get in sync, to actually spend the time listening and hearing and understanding when you're working with somebody in that space. And when you're working with whānau who might not understand what's going on for their whānau as well.
I think that can be a big thing, eh? It's just, I don't know, how do you work through that with whānau?
How do you work through that with whānau? That's a great question. And I think part of it is understanding, or going back to those priorities that, we're tapu, like we're all important. So if your whānau's important, that's why they're in that, and I think at the end of the day, the whānau are always going to be the ones there.
Yeah.
Like the services will come and go, but if there's a relapse, if there's a thing, the whānau actually need, they're the ones that are going to be there checking on their mum or their dad or their auntie or their son or their daughter, and it's the whānau that need to have the skills and to have the confidence that they're doing. I'd hate to say this the right thing, but they're doing something that's going to help.
Yeah.
Because I think not having the conversation or asking the question, sometimes out of fear or just not sure how to do it. So we've got great resources to help whānau to know how to have that conversation. Are
you able to share some of those with us?
They're on the centre website, so I can give you those. And those
because I think that's a big thing, eh? Like people might think, oh, there's something up with X, Y. I just don't know what it is, but I've just got a bad feeling. But partly you don't want to acknowledge it to yourself, and partly you don't want to say it out loud in case that sort of brings it into being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a big fear that people have, and I don't know, I mean, that maybe stops people saying something, and then...
Yeah.
I don't know how you would... what's your advice to someone who has got sort of those nagging thoughts, oh, I'm worried about this person?
Yeah, I think two things is probably to let them know that you love them unconditionally and that you're there for them. And the second thing is to actually ask them, like, what's going on for you? How are you feeling? Are you thinking about suicide? Like when you ask that question, and then, be open to whatever the response is and linking them into other supports.
Yeah. And that would be the helplines or the Youthline?
The helplines, the Youthlines, the GP, emergency psych services, the ED.
Yeah.
All of those services should be able to help if somebody's at risk or not.
And of course, coping. People themselves, if they're feeling that they are kind of at the end of thinking, knowing what to do, then you can also just those helplines are 1737 and they're 24/7, eh?
Yeah. And
I don't know what the difference between a helpline and the Youthline. The Youthline is 0800 3766633. But what is the difference? Do you know?
I think the Youthline is probably more youth focused and trained to deal with youth or support youth, whereas the Helpline and the suicide prevention lines will, they've slightly different training, but all of them should be available to support.
And is there I know New Zealand has quite a large, issue with young people's suicides compared to other countries in the world. And I wondered if you wanted to comment on that. The
comment is that, yes, we do. we do lose a lot of our youth. We lose, an unacceptable amount of our Indigenous population. I think we're one of the highest in the world, and at least 2, sometimes 3 times more likely, in some cases, to lose our whānau. The reality is if we have a better approach, where our services, our community understands that when whānau are struggling, anyone, iwi katoa, are struggling, then we prioritise them because actually he tapu te tangata.
Yeah.
People who are important, they actually should come first. I think about it like if, we might have 20 services in town that I might call as the post-vention coordinator. And, I know there's probably 6 services that will absolutely respond immediately. And there's a number of services that might say, oh, no, sorry, that doesn't fit in my contract, or sorry, we don't have capacity. And I kind of think about it, actually, those 6 services that do that work because they know it's right. They're the ones I trust.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that, really have the values that align.
Yeah.
And then I think of the other ones and think, actually, maybe they don't.
So do you think we're making progress? Do you think we're going in the right way?
Well, I think we direction? That's what I mean. I think we need a cross-government, commissioning approach that says that actually suicide is important.
Yeah.
And actually, if something comes up in the scope of your work, you should prioritise that.
Yeah.
And there should be a mechanism within our system that says we don't want to lose our whānau, any of them. And so if it comes up, then actually do what you can to address it within the scope of your service.
Yeah.
Whether it's you're working in the council, or you're in the police, or you're a social worker, or you're a NGO, or a school, whatever it is, there should be cross-government agreement that actually suicide prevention is a priority.
Yeah.
And while you have a contract, actually, we want you to help. How do we help approach rather than sorry, we're only funded to do this. Yeah, so is
the problem that there's not enough people trained to help, or there's not enough resources to is it a funding issue, or is it a training issue, or is it both? There's not enough funding, so there's not enough capability?
I think it's a model of care issue, and partly the model of care doesn't utilise the resources that we might have available to us. And partly it's you could say it's a funding issue, but I think we actually have the resources if we use them effectively.
Right.
We have the resources to respond, but there might be an area that's really needing more support that's not getting it, and so it's around having that flexibility and a model that actually delivers when it needs to, where it needs to.
And I guess there's still stigma around losing people,
there
rather
is.
Than so like if you've got competing demands on your time when your funds and stuff like that, it's about, as you said, how do you raise it so that it's has to be a number one health issue rather than
I think
hip replacements or something, like we kind of, it becomes quite combative, the whole health. It's really emotive and
But I think you're right. I think it's stigma. There's a stigma on all sorts of levels as well. Like on the individual level, people don't feel like at work they can say, hey, look, I'm struggling, because then people won't take them seriously at work, or they'll lose promotions, or they'll lose, people might just fire them just to get them out of the way because they're a problem. There's all sorts of things about, I guess being, like just showing emotion, especially in a Kiwi context.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's having that that culture within workplaces and within all of our environments, really, where it's okay to externalise what's going on, but there's also, when you externalise, there's an expectation that people will hear you and work with you to identify what needs to happen to support you to be well.
Yeah.
I think what we often, especially when you're unwell, you just want to feel happy again, or you want to, you feel like you have to actually. What I understand is that you don't go from feeling terrible to feeling happy.
Right.
You go from feeling terrible to feeling not quite so terrible to feeling okay to feeling better to feeling good to feeling happy.
Yeah, and often with a little bit of backstepping in the middle there as well.
Yeah.
So like you could be feeling like slightly better and then actually not so good today, and then like hopefully it's like an overall smooth trajectory.
And that's why the awa is so important, because we know as you know, if you think about a dirty cup, it doesn't get clean straight away as soon as you reconnect the flow. It has to take time to wash and clean itself
and
out.
Sometimes you get caught in little eddies and it gets a little bit backwards.
Yeah, but the key thing is to keep the flow going, keep the good flow coming in. So that's, the things that make you feel engaged, make you feel connected, give you a purpose. Keep doing those things, because those are the things that will clean out your system, whether it's chopping the firewood for your koro, whether it's going and fishing and then feeding your whānau, whether it's going to work every day and, engage, whatever those things are that fill you up, that fill up your way to a
It's interesting that it's like feeling useful, doing something that, you're saying like going to work and bringing home the food and feeding your whānau. It's like you being useful and giving whatever it is, food or time or energy to other people, often makes you feel better as well.
I'll mihi to Mark and Dai Kōpua, who do mahi atua. So they talk to a pūrākau of, there's lots of pūrākau, but they talk to one of Uru. Uru was one of the older brothers at the time of the separation of Rangi and Papa. Tāne had basically separated his parents, but we didn't get the awate, we didn't get the immediate flood of light. What we got was a really damp māku space where the world was basically flooded in tears and sorrow and grief. And so basically made the world worse, not better. And so he had a wānanga with all of his whānau, couldn't solve the problem, so they stayed in this māku, this damp, cold space.
Yeah. Purgatory.
And after a long time, after realising that there's somebody else, they needed somebody else in the wānanga to solve the issue, so Tāne started to look around to work out who wasn't there, and he realised Uru wasn't there, so he started searching for Uru, and eventually he found, or he was basically calling out Uru's name continuously because he's quite persistent, Tāne. And Uru, 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 Uru. And Uru finally gets sick of hearing his name because he goes, out, shush. I'll say it politely. And then Tāne knew where Uru was. He was actually up in under the korowai of Ranginui, hiding, grieving with his father over the separation, the trauma of breaking up the whānau. So Tāne then ascended to Uru, and when he finds Uru, Uru's got these baskets that are catching all of his tears, and the tears are glowing. And so Tāne asks Uru for his help. He doesn't say, "Oh, bro, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right." He actually says, "I need your help."
Ah, that's interesting.
And that's what sort of brought Uru re-engaging and then starting to get well again, was actually understanding that Uru had a purpose. Even his tears, his grief had a purpose. And that's what brought the different, the marama, the whetū, the sun, all of those good things come out of the baskets of Uru's tears.
Yeah, the moon, and that's a nice way of thinking about the moon and the stars and the sun.
Yeah.
They're sort of coming.
So that was, so in that pūrākau, it reminds us that actually it's about having a purpose. Yeah. Having the mauri and our whānau acknowledging that there's a purpose for us.
And it doesn't have to be grand purpose.
It doesn't have to be a grand purpose.
Just something that rocks your boat kind of thing.
I know that, the first thing I always do with whānau that come to see me for the first time, I often say two things. What do you eat? And where do you go? Not do you want to go somewhere, but where do you go and what do you eat? And so if it's apples they like, we'll go get an apple. If it's fish and chips they like, we'll go get a fish and chips. Just ask them, okay, eat this for me. And then we'll go to the place where they go, whether it's the beach, whether it's the forest, whether it's the park. That's the place that we'll go. And in that way, we just start the movement. We start the momentum that actually we're starting to live again. We're starting to think again. We're starting to feel again. And then, then we can start to have kōrero around what's actually happening and understand what needs to be released. And then we've got medicines to release stuff. We've got the water, we've got the fire, we've got the air, we've got the forest. All of these things can help us to release whatever it is needs to be released. So knowing the medicines that we have We have the miri, the romi, the wairuatanga, the karakia, all of these tools that we have to release those different māmai. And then it's around working through which ones work for the person.
And that's interesting because that's something that people can think about for themselves as well, is what's my place? And, if you just had like a connection, like if you just decide, okay, I'm going to Orokanui with that forest and walking through the path there, it's there all year round. If I just make myself go there every week on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is, then you get that connection. And, obviously sometimes you can't go, and sometimes, or the sea, or go down to the beach and walk along, I don't know, a beach somewhere, or in the tussocks or somewhere, or just like for yourself. I'm just thinking things that people could do for themselves that actually taking from that kororo that you've got there.
Yeah.
I guess it's like taking the time just to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and being, so I think about my relationship with myself. I need to be in sync with myself before I can help anyone else.
Yeah.
So I need to know my capabilities, where my confidence comes from, where I sit and feel about different things. And so, when I go to the ngahere, sometimes I go there to hunt. Sometimes I just go there to pick the fruit or the hua.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go there to gather the rongoa.
Yeah. Sometimes it can just be your garden, can't it? Yeah. Or just,
Yeah, easy. And it's about, understanding that that if you're in sync with yourself, then you start to understand what you need. So I know that, if I haven't been in the water for a couple of weeks, then I need to go to the water.
So you're a water baby.
Yeah. I know if I haven't had venison for a while, I need to go to the ngahere. But, those are the things, like e kiki ana te puku.
Yeah. Hey, we've only got 3 minutes left. Final words for this New Year's Day special. Words of wisdom from the amazing Mathew Kiore. Thank you so much for coming along. This has been one of the more interesting shows that we've done, and I hope that everyone at home can actually take something away from this episode and your words there as well.
I think just be yourself. Just be yourself, actually. Like we talk about lots of stuff, but actually just get comfortable with yourself. Get comfortable with being with yourself, and connect with others. If you feel like you need help, just find somebody that will listen to you. There are lots of us out there that care and want you to be well. And so, reach out, find somebody to connect with and support you. And just remember that if you are feeling pain or hurt, that's not the natural way for you to be feeling. So find somebody that will help you to heal yourself and release that stuff so that you don't have to feel that way.
Yeah. And if there's no one in your whānau or friends that you feel that you can open up to, there are always those lines. The helplines, 1737. The Youthline is 0800 376633. And there's always, your GP.
Yep. EDs. We've got great nurses and doctors all around the country that can help hook you up and find somebody to work with you. Yeah. Yeah.
And, maybe...
Kia kaha.
Kia kaha. Kia kaha. Thank you very much, Matt. Maybe a short karakia just to end us off there and set us on our way for the new year.
Hapai. Ko te aroa te pau wa kia mau, ko te aroa te pau tiri ake au, kia mau kia au te pau, taraha ki wainua tātou nei whānau. Hau me hui e tākie. Māori Ora koutou.
You've been listening to the OI podcast, the shout out for the arts, sciences and mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI podcast on OAR FM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.